I got all I want, and I got all I need, and I got everything. I got you and me. All I want, I got all I need.
Marriage is the best. Hey, and welcome back to Marriage is the Best, episode number 10. Here we go.
Marriage. Marriage is what brings us together today.
That's right. Marriage is the thing that brings us together today. And what a day it is. It is flipping cold out there. I think our high today was 12 and our low was -1. So it was really cold outside. I went outside a few different times just in a t-shirt, and it's bearable. You can do it, throwing out the garbage or taking out the garbage or, running an errand, taking something to the mailbox. It's definitely doable, but it's cold, super cold. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about 20 minutes and the idea of spending 20 minutes together in connection, in communication, doing something that's building up the marriage and doing that every day, making it a habit and creating a system where you guys can continue to do that on a regular basis. So I was actually talking to a friend just the other day about your life, and we were going through our lives and just kind of talking about the stresses of life, right? Kind of how we talk about the 20 minutes and how important that is. Well, we spent, 30 minutes just talking to one another about the stresses of our children and the stresses of households and families and expectations and all sorts of good stuff. It was really refreshing, really uplifting, and it made me want to be so much better for my kids and for my wife. When I got home after that conversation, I was just refreshed. So thank you so much for that conversation, my friend. But anyways, in the conversation, he was saying that he listened to the Sustainable Systems podcast, and that he and his wife were actually starting to implement some of the 20-minute conversations. Now, those conversations are kind of formal, right? There's 3 different conversations that we go over, 3 different styles of conversation that we go over, but they're a little bit formalized and they're talked about in kind of at least how I remember it, in more of like a clinical fashion. And he was saying that they were trying some of those out and then that they were kind of making it their own. So I could hear that the intentionality was there. I could hear that they were kind of going after this thing and trying to apply the idea of 20 minutes to sustain your marriage, or 20 minutes to save your marriage, or a daily spark, that sort of idea into their marriage. So it's super encouraging to hear. The same day, my wife gets a text from his spouse about them doing similar things. It was this huge. I mean, we essentially just like broke down at the kitchen table because we were so excited. We were so excited that that was going on. So, hoorah! It actually reminded me of a session the other day where I was talking to a couple, and they were saying, in the session, they're saying they were experiencing increased satisfaction. They weren't using these words, but these are my words for it. Decreased conflict, increased capacity to interpret each other favorably, right? So instead of the lens of this person is out to get me, they were replacing that to, or like, doesn't like me or is not, intentional or not really plugged into us. And they were replacing that lens with something more positive. They were replacing the lens with, all right, like they're trying, they're working on it. They're on their way. And just that was having a very positive impact on their marriage. They were also experiencing decreased relational stress over the holidays. And I could have, again, just broken down very manly, just doing it a very, very manly way, but breaking down in the session and just very excited for them because I could tell that they were happy. It was really refreshing because there was smiles and there were jokes and the walls and the guards were coming down, and they were opening up to each other and opening up, well, and, in a way they were opening up to me, but really it was to each other. For now, the focal point is outside of the marriage, just because I think it's a little easier. It's a little easier to look outside of the marriage for this, to the third party help, instead of looking at your spouse directly. And I think marriage counseling does provide a helpful tool in that if you're really struggling to work through these connections and these conversations, and you're finding it really difficult to make them work, sometimes if you aim those difficult feelings at a third party and bounce them off a third party, like a good counselor, you're going to find different things, especially if you're stuck in it. And that's okay to be stuck. It's very normal to be stuck. But that may be a good opportunity to go and bounce those ideas off of a counselor in order to receive a different perspective. And in that, maybe coming out with some different tools, some different ways of going about, having those conversations and building up your connections again. So, but that couple actually let me know that this is the same couple that was experiencing, this increased satisfaction and decreased conflict, etc. They let me know that they were struggling to have success with the formalized versions of the 20-minute conversations that we talk about. So instead of those 20 minutes of, hey, let's sit down face to face and talk through something, this individual was finding that they were just being more intentional when they had an opportunity to talk, to share more. And that was awesome. It's fantastic that they were kind of moving toward each other in their communication, even though it felt really difficult to do it in a formalized fashion. The principle is still there. We're communicating, we're updating, we're staying in contact, we're connecting through the sharing of information in our day-to-day lives. That's not the first time that I've heard difficulty in the formal, having these kind of rote or prescribed, like a prescribed conversation. And that's kind of what we're doing here, right? Is that it's a prescription for your marriage. Is your marriage needs this day to day, so please, get this in. And when it's approached in a prescriptive way and you're attempting to have these conversations, but they're just really awkward, it's okay to make it your own. And I think that's kind of one of the things that I wanted to address today, is that formalized conversations are great, and they actually can be super helpful, especially if you don't know where to start, or if you're just really blessed by having kind of a formal structure to your conversation. It also is helpful because it puts a bug in your ear, like, oh, I have to get this, like, I have to check this thing off, because it's part of my prescription, because it's part of the work that I'm doing and the system that I'm creating to intentionally pursue my spouse so that long-term we can have success. I need to have that bug in my ear so that I remember, and I keep that bug, in my brain as well, so that when I'm really tired at the end of the day, but I know Becca and I really haven't had a formalized conversation, or haven't really spent the time to download, making that time and space in conversation, whether it be pausing a show to turn toward her and just say, hey, let's give an update, or being mindful of my phone and putting that down, to, like, if she's in the room and we're right there, instead of just staying on it, I'm turning toward her and I'm trying to connect by sharing information and being on the same page and hearing where she's at and hearing maybe where her stress levels are for the next day, or, like just kind of life in general. So it is good to make this your own, and it's good to attempt the formal conversations, but also to step into your world and your partner's world and find out, okay, what works for me? What do I like? Maybe I like playing Catan at the end of the night. And so that's a board game. Settlers of Catan, like maybe we sit down and we play Catan, but obviously Becca hates Catan because why wouldn't she? And she decides that she doesn't want to do that. And so, but maybe it would bless me for her to play Catan, or maybe we compromise and we play Ticket to Ride instead. And that is a blessing to her because she prefers that one, but also she's making a sacrifice and we're creating a connection because we're doing something that I enjoy and we're doing something that she is loving me and serving me with by enjoying it alongside me. Maybe for her, she just wants to talk. She just wants me to share and like be really intentional with my sharing. Maybe she just wants me to tell her all of the things, like to dig down deep into the details of my day and of my life and of my memory and like spit out word for word what I said and what they said and how it went and what it went and how, all of the things, obviously doing that ethically and not sharing, I'm not talking about us talking about counseling, but, so like that's more her style, that's what blesses her. That's what makes her feel connected. So there are things that make me feel connected. There are things that make her feel really connected. And so our job as a couple is then to turn toward each other to see the ways that each of us want to connect and then to do the connecting that each of us are in need of, to do that work. So I'm looking for ways to love her and bless her. I'm not going to make her a cup of coffee at the end of the night. I'm not going to put fruit in her smoothie and her, chocolate milkshakes that she loves so very much. I'm not going to do some of those things because I really know her and I seek to know her and I know that those things don't bless her. So we're in the middle of a show, we were just in the middle of a show that I was enjoying, but I was kind of watching it for her because she really wanted to watch this and she was really enjoying it. I could tell. So I tried to just be patient and to just like stick with it because I knew that it was blessing her that we were just, engaged in watching this together. So all that to say, you can make it your own. It does take a little bit of self-awareness to know what you like when connecting with your spouse. And if you're struggling with that part of it, I would say to just pay attention as you're trying to connect, like what is working for you. Obviously there are things that men and women generally are just like, make us feel connected. And that's great. And you can, default to some of those things, but I think it's also important for you to look inward and find those things that would really bless you and then communicate those. So that's like a two-parter, right? Find the things that would bless you, find the things that would make you feel those connections. How do you want to spend the 20 minutes? If that's the principle, right? If that's like the prescription, that's what we need to do, making it your own and finding the things that will bless you as a person and as an individual and making it something that's specific, specific to you. And then also finding those specific things in your partner that bless her or him, either one. And just being a good student, like you want to be a good student of your partner. You want to turn toward them and get to know what would bless them in your 20 minutes. And then if you've got tons of energy that evening and you can go all in on something that they really love because you're maybe more full than they are, and then the vice versa, right? When you're really down and just like, oh, I just need to do something that really is more of a me thing, or, you just balance that out, right? And it, you find a good rhythm for both. So yeah, not the first time that I heard that sentiment that it's difficult to find the structured time. It's difficult to formalize the time. I do have a couple points to like think about within that, beyond just making it your own. And a shout out to Meg Meeker and her podcast, Parenting Great Kids. Phenomenal resource. She has, really high level professionals on all sorts of different areas. So if you're looking for a great parenting resource and a really phenomenal a woman who has a great podcast and a great heart for people and helping people to raise their kids, and among a myriad of other things. She's also written a great book for dads called Hero. That's a really good one. But yeah, so spending time together to get updated looks different for every couple. So you're just going to have to find something so that's point one. Find your rhythm and find something specific to you guys. The other thing is that if you're spending time and it feels really awkward, because that is something that I hear fairly frequently, it's okay to allow those awkward feelings I would really encourage you to allow those awkward feelings to kind of sit, to sit and be present with those awkward feelings. Those awkward feelings when you're trying to re-engage and reconnect and rekindle things with your spouse, or you're trying to do something new, maybe something that you haven't necessarily done in the past. Those awkward feelings are both normal, to be expected, and they actually can say that maybe you're on the right track. You're on a different path. The previous path led you to the place of disconnection, or you're just looking to improve things. And part of the improvement process is some of that friction internally, and that friction can come across as like awkwardness or anxiousness or difficulty as you work through trying to connect maybe you're new to the idea of connecting in a certain way that your spouse really enjoys. Maybe you're new to Settlers of Catan, you don't really know the rules, but you're willing to learn, right? Like you're willing to sit there and lose, and do your best. And maybe you're just willing to engage them in that way and to fight through that awkwardness or that difficulty or losing the game. That's good. And it gives each other opportunities to kind of grow individually and interpersonally. You're better off for learning and growing and pushing through some of those awkward feelings and some of that difficulty. Obviously we don't want to like purposefully make it harder than we have to. It's not like all forms of awkwardness or difficulty or anxiousness are good. That's not what I'm saying. But it is important to kind of stick with it, even if it is awkward. And sometimes that's just a reflection of the season or the newness or not having done it before. So actually, and that would kind of be one of my tips for the masculine part of the marriage. It would be to like stick through those tense or awkward moments. And this is, a lot of this actually applies to dating too, but stick through some of those tense and awkward moments and practice feeling that way. Like it's okay to kind of allow those feelings to come in and to be with you and to be with them and to be kind of, present in that feeling. It kind of sounds weird, and it's not like a woo-woo presence in the feeling, kind of like, but the idea would be that if you expose yourself to those feelings, to that awkwardness, and work through it, the next time that you have to face it, you're going to work through it a little better and a little better and a little better, and you'll get improvement over time. And then what will actually end up happening, and what happened to Rebecca and I over time, and I would say that more recently, as I've been more mindful and more intentional in our 20 minutes, I have found that I actually am not only not feeling awkward or stressed when I'm trying to pursue those conversations and those connections. I am finding that I'm really looking forward to it, even if I am at the end of my rope, even if I need to shoot some zombies for 20 minutes and then jump back in. Even that is like, I really enjoy, and I want to get to the point where I can jump in and enjoy spending those 20 minutes and making sure that we are creating those daily connections. You can overcome them. You absolutely can overcome those feelings with time and practice. A tip for the feminine then would be that, and this is something that kind of maybe would help you to set like a mindset shift, is that just because a man may be uncomfortable or feel those feelings of awkwardness or difficulty in trying to like create those connections or stick with a conversation or stick with a difficult feeling or stick with a difficult moment or address, a hard conversation, it doesn't mean that the desire to connect is not there. Interpreting that in that way is going to really discourage the man from continuing to work through those feelings, whereas maybe encouraging them and sticking with them and being patient with them as they learn and grow and try to overcome those things in time is going to really bless not only him, but also bless you, because you're going to be eventually getting the connection that you're looking for. It's just going to take time for him to kind of learn the skills and do the reps and overcome some of those dynamics. And I'm not saying that you'd have to be unreasonable. I'm not saying that like you gotta just sit around and not hold them somewhat accountable or not. You don't have to sit back and not be connected with forever. That's not good. It's not healthy, and that's not a proper function. So I'm not saying that you do that, but it is really helpful to allow for space and grace in that process. That's what I'm saying. Space and grace in the process. Cool. And then if you need to remind him, of your preferences and how you would like to connect, do that gently, and you'll find more success with it. Okay, so in our 8th episode, I talked a little bit about the marital seasons and specifically a theory that I have on marital puberty, how, that's one of the marital seasons. There's a lot of awkwardness and difficulty in that season. And so sometimes, sometimes I would run into a couple that would say, like, that would feel so broken. They would feel so broken in their current season because they were feeling so disconnected. And at times I would reflect back to them that maybe it's normal that you're feeling this way because of, A, look at your systems, and B, look at where you're at, and maybe C, maybe you're early on. And I remember talking to a much older couple, and they were on their second marriage. And so we were coaching and talking through some of this like puberty that they were going through, right? Like they had ever been married to this specific individual with these specific issues, and every marriage has a set. Every marriage has a set. So it's normal to have a set of issues, and it's normal to have to work through them. And it's only through putting the work that you get to develop past marital puberty to get to those places where you really enjoy those things that used to be awkward, and the things that you might used to respond to really defensively, you're able to respond really appropriately, or maybe just a little less defensively, which is great. And marital puberty, if it's really difficult and it's really hard to move through that, it might just be a season of development in your relationship. Not that you guys are horribly broken, not that this is just something that doesn't actually work, right? Not that those little white lies about your partner or your relationship or the failure of it, or that it's inevitable, or that you just don't fit, it's just not good. None of that. It might just be that you're in a difficult season, and then, I was talking with a couple just the other day about their season and how, they were just going through everything, right? It was medical, it was familial, it was grief and loss, it was crazy parenting season, it was transitions everywhere. And then I just reflected back to them their season, and I think that they just absorbed, right, that they're part of the reason that they were feeling the way they were feeling is just they were in a survival system, a survival season, kind of like, what Pastor Eric was talking about, Reverend Eric was talking about in that 8th episode. He was talking about their surviving seasons and how now it's a little bit more natural, and they've kind of moved through that season of development. So it's okay to be there, Everybody has to go through it if the marriage is going to be sustained. And how you move through that and getting through that is going to be connected to the systems that you set up in your marriage. So the period will actually go away and you will actually overcome it when you find your rhythm and if you continue to work at it and be intentional about it. So as long as you're honoring the principle of spending this time daily as you can, to connect with your marriage, you are going to be increasing your intimacy and growing in the connection and satisfaction in your marriage. I had a couple the other day that gave themselves a failing grade on spending the daily time. And instead of coming down on them like a good therapist would and being like, no, like you guys didn't put in the effort and you're not being intentional and shame, you should have done all this other stuff. Instead of doing that, I pivoted. That's what I would normally do, but instead, not really. Instead of doing that, we pivoted, right? We changed directions, and instead we went this other way. We said, okay, so what are you doing? What is there? What does it look? What's working? Because they weren't in like this terrible place in their marriage, but they were not feeling as connected as they wanted to. So we highlighted a couple of things that were working, a couple of moments that they did have day to day that was creating a semblance of connection, but they were reflecting to me that they weren't where they wanted to be. So then we were able to kind of dive into that. So what we found when we dove into the connections that they wanted to be creating was that all it was going to take really was a little bit of extra intentionality in 2 little moments of the day. 2 little moments of the day. So they had this normal, natural rhythm of connecting after a long day's of work where they did a little download. But for some reason, they were thinking that didn't quite count because it maybe because of the formalization process, maybe because it wasn't formal. And so we were talking about enhancing that moment to create more connection so that each of them would feel more connected. And then this moment after, kids were down and enhancing that moment because they were already creating a moment. Like it was there, but we brainstormed a couple of ideas of how that could become a little bit deeper of a connection. And I think that they walked away really encouraged. So I want to encourage you with that as well. Sometimes it's not about adding something to the list. Sometimes it's not about you have to do more, right? We're requiring you to do more in order for you to sustain your marriage. You have to do more than what you're doing. And that is often daunting because everyone that I run into feels like their plate is full. And that's because it is, their plate is usually full. Especially when I'm talking about married people who are like just living life. Most people's lives are really, really full. And it would logically not make any sense if they were coming in with empty plates and saying, and we're not connected, right? Like we have all this time to connect, but we're not connected. Or anyways, so the vast majority of couples just don't have that much time or energy or space. And in part, doing this intentionally is about carving out the space and time. But it doesn't have to be adding on to an already crazy stressful time. It can also be trying to enhance and make more intentional the moments that you already are creating and just like building on that, right? You're not building something from scratch, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And there's already things in your relationship that are good, and you can continue to work toward enhancing those things, making them more satisfactory and, making them more enjoyable and more sustainable, more a part of a sustainable system. I have also heard a few times that some people are finding it daunting to spend 20 minutes communicating or connecting. I would probably just agree with that. And I think it would fit into kind of what I was just saying, where, if you're having some trouble, start something small, start with something mutual, build on it, maybe find something that instead of, building a table from scratch, maybe you look at the kitchen table and tighten some bolts and do some, you do some maintenance on what you're already doing. So find a rhythm that you do have. If you don't have any rhythms, then, well, maybe just you're going to have to do some more, some extra work. It's going to take some extra finagling and some extra sacrifice then in order to make it work. But it's worth it. It's always worth it. So 20 minutes, it'll save your marriage. Sustainable systems are, it's a part of almost all facets of our life. And so in our marriages, part of this sustainable system is 20 minutes connecting, communicating, and working on that. So good luck. I hope that it goes really well. I hope that you continue to pursue your spouse. I hope that is, you find just joy and enjoyment in that. Thank you so much for listening. Shoot us over an email at marriagesthebest@yahoo.com. Send us a text or a voicemail at the number that's in the description. Feel free to click on any of those. I think we have 5 books right now, and probably continue to add more resources, but they're just links to Amazon. If you want to go pick up some of those like more formal resources, and if you feel like that's a good thing to help. Happy New Year, and thanks again. Bye, everybody.
And I got all I need. And I got